Hey everyone, in this next video we are going to talk about working with polynomials. So let's do a quick review of what a polynomial is. A polynomial is just a term or a group of terms, two or more terms. And we can do, let's first talk about the names we have for those, right? So we have monomial, and that's when we have only one term. A binomial is two terms. Right? Bi means two, so that would be two terms. And a trinomial, you guessed it, would be three terms. And so we can perform operations. We can add, subtract, multiply, and even divide. Excuse me, when we're dealing with polynomials. So we're going to do a few different examples here. The first one we'll do is talking about finding the sum. Remember, sum is adding. When you add or subtract, you have to only add and subtract like terms. So remember, like terms are terms that have the same variable with the same exponent. So for example, x cubed and 7x cubed would be like terms, or negative ab and 4ab would be like terms. 2x squared y and negative 10x squared y, right? Those are all like terms because the variables that they have also have the same exponent with them. Terms that would not be like terms, so not like terms, would be something like x cubed and x squared, or x squared y and xy squared. Okay, those are not like terms because even though these both have x's, they don't have the same exponent. Same down here, even though they both have x's and y's, the x's and the y's don't have the same exponents. Okay, so like terms, you can only add and subtract like terms, and that means same variable with the same exponent. So if we look at this first problem, we're going to find the sum, which means we have to combine like terms. So let's start with our first term here. We have 6x squared. So I'm going to look for another x squared term. There's another one here. And so I have 6x squared and 7x squared. So if I add those numbers together, that gives me a total of 13x squared. Now, when you are adding or subtracting, that exponent does not change. Okay, the exponent does not change. If you had 6 cookies and you added 7 cookies to it, you have 13 cookies. You don't have 13 cookies times 2, right? So that exponent does not change. Okay, let's look at the next term. I'll do a different color here. So let's look at the next one. We have negative 3x, and then I'm going to look for another like term, so I have another negative 3x there. And so with those two, I can combine those, and when I combine them, I would end up with negative 3, and negative 3 would give me negative 6x. If you're not sure, go to your calculator, right? Negative 3 plus negative 3. It gives me negative 6. Okay, so that's where that negative 6 comes from. Okay, next thing I'm going to look at my constant terms, and I have a 9 and a 5, so I can combine those, and when I combine 9 and 5, that gives me 14. Now, if you see, I've taken care of everything over here, but I still have this one last term hanging out here, this 9x cubed. So I want to make sure that I include that in my answer. Now, I'm going to put that out front because I always want to write my answer so that my exponents go in decreasing order. So I'm going to throw that 9x cubed out front. So I started with my first expression, my first trinomial, and I matched all of those terms up with whatever other terms were there, combined them, and then I went back and checked to see if I missed any terms. Okay, so my final answer here is 9x cubed plus 13x squared minus 6x plus 14. In the second example, we're going to be finding the difference. Now, I personally think it's easier to deal with the negative first, deal with that subtraction first, and then combine like terms. So what I like to do is rewrite my entire problem, and I'm just going to take everything out of parentheses. Okay, so I have to distribute that negative to every single term, which means the sign of every term after that subtraction has to change. So n to the 7th is now going to be negative n to the 7th. Positive 3n to the 3rd is now going to be negative 3n to the 3rd. Negative 6n is now going to be positive 6n, and positive 12 is now going to be negative 12. Okay, so I literally just took away the parentheses and changed the sign of everything. And now when I add, it's much easier because I've already dealt with the negative. So now I can just combine my like terms. So let's start. I've got 7n to the 7th, and then I have this negative n to the 7th. So if I have 7 and I take 1 away, that leaves me with 6n to the 7th. Let's go to the next term. I have 9n cubed, and then I have minus 3n cubed. So I have 9, I take away 3, that leaves me with 6n cubed. Okay, let's go to the next term. I have negative 6n and positive 6n. So if I have negative 6 and then I add 6 to it, they basically cancel each other out, right? They add to 0. So I don't need to write that down here. And then let's look at our last one. I have negative 6 and negative 12. When you have those negatives, if those signs mess you up, check it in the calculator. Negative 6 plus negative 12. You could do it that way. That gives you negative 18. Or you could do negative 6 minus 12. That will also give you negative 18. Okay, so you could do that either way. And so that would be then negative 18. Notice I've dealt with every single term that I have here, so I didn't miss anything. So I know that this is my final answer. Okay, let's look at a multiplication problem. When you see two binomials multiplied together, that should remind you of FOIL. And we talked about FOIL. We said that stands for first, outside, inside, and last. It's just a fancy way to help you remember that you have to distribute twice. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that first term, 2x, and I'm going to distribute it to both terms over here. So I'm first going to multiply it by 3x, and then I will multiply it by 4. So 2x times 3x gives me 6x squared. So when you multiply, that exponent changes. I had an x and an x. When I multiply x by x, that gives me x squared. Okay, then I have 2x times 4. That's going to give me 8x. Next, I'm going to take the second term, and I'm going to distribute that to both terms in the other binomial. So I have negative 5 times 3x gives me negative 15x. Negative 5 times 4 gives me negative 20. Okay, so I did all of the multiplication. I took 2x and multiplied it by both terms, and I took negative 5 and multiplied it by both terms. The only thing I need to do now is combine my like terms. Those two middle terms here are like terms. And so I can combine them. So I have 6x squared. 8 minus 15, if you want, you can check that in your calculator. 8 minus 15 is going to leave you with negative 7. So negative 7x minus 20, and that's your final answer. Okay, FOIL. First means the first two terms in the binomials. Outside means the outside terms. Inside means the inside two terms. Last means the last two terms in each binomial. Okay, in this last example, we have a trinomial and a binomial. So we can't do FOIL, but we're going to basically follow that same idea. I'm going to start with the first term, and I'm going to multiply that by each term in the binomial. So a squared times 5a is going to give me 5a cubed. A squared times 2 is going to give me 2a squared. Now I'm going to go to the next term. I have negative 3a. So I'm going to go ahead and take that, and I'm going to multiply that by 5a, and then I'll multiply that by 2. So negative 3a times positive 5a gives me negative 15a squared. Then negative 3a times 2 gives me negative 6a. Okay, so that takes care of that. Now I'm going to go ahead and look at the 1, and I'm going to multiply the 1 by both terms in my binomial. So 1 times 5a is 5a, and 1 times 2 gives me 2. Now, once again, I'm going to go ahead and combine my like terms. So I'll start with, let's see, I will start with 5a cubed. I don't have any other a cubed terms in there, so that leaves me with 5a cubed. I'll go to 2a squared, 2a squared, and negative 15a squared, right? Those are my like terms. So I have 2 minus 15. You can check that in your calculator. 2 minus 15, that's going to give you negative 13. So that's going to be negative 13a squared. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and look at my next two terms, my a term. So I have negative 6 plus 5. Go ahead and check that in your calculator if you're not sure. Negative 6 plus 5 is going to give you negative 1. So that's going to be negative 1a, which we can just write as negative a. And then I just have that plus 2 on the end. And so I have to include that in my answer. So remember, when you're multiplying, you always add the exponents, but when you're just adding or subtracting, the exponent doesn't change. So those are some quick examples of adding, subtracting. Remember, distribute the negative first, then combine your like terms, and multiplying. We are going to go ahead and FOIL if we have two binomials, which is really just distributing twice. And if you have a trinomial and a binomial, you're just going to distribute however many times you need to. All right, everybody, we'll see you next time. Thanks.